Elias wiped sweat from his brow, his parched throat burning with each labored breath. The twin suns of Nexoria beat down mercilessly, their combined heat turning the alien landscape into a shimmering mirage. 3 days since his survey ship had crashed. 3 days of trudging across the violet plains with dwindling supplies. His water had run out hours ago. When he spotted the garden, an oasis of strange, luminescent vegetation surrounding what appeared to be a dwelling, he nearly collapsed with relief. The structure was unlike anything human architecture would produce. Asymmetrical, with curves that seemed to defy physics, constructed of some iridescent material that reflected the sunlight in prismatic patterns. But it was the small fountain that drew his desperate attention. A simple tap protruding from a basin of what looked like polished obsidian. Water, or something like it, trickled in a steady stream, collecting in the basin before disappearing through an unseen outlet. Elias glanced around. No sign of inhabitants. The diplomatic briefing had mentioned that Nexorians valued hospitality, though contact had been minimal. Surely they wouldn't begrudge a dying man a drink. He stumbled forward, fell to his knees before the fountain and cupped his hands beneath the flow. The liquid was cool, slightly viscous with an electric tingle that spread through his mouth and down his throat as he drank greedily. Vitality surged through him immediately. His vision sharpened, the ache in his muscles subsided, and his mind cleared of the fog of dehydration. This was no ordinary water. You have no idea what you just became. The voice behind him was melodic yet chilling. Elias spun around, losing balance and falling backward against the basin. She stood tall, nearly 7 feet, her purple skin catching the sunlight in a way that made it seem to pulse with internal energy. Her dark hair cascaded in waves down past her shoulders, adorned with what appeared to be living ornaments, small, glowing creatures that twisted themselves into intricate patterns. Her eyes were entirely black, no whites or visible pupils, yet somehow he could feel her gaze boring into him. I'm sorry. Elias stammered. I was dying of thirst. I'm lost, my ship. Silence. Her command wasn't shouted, yet it seemed to vibrate the air between them. You drank from the wellspring of House Valeri without permission or offering. This is not mere water, human. It is the lifeblood of my lineage, filtered through generations of my ancestors. I didn't know. Ignorance does not absolve transgression. She raised a 6-fingered hand, and Elias felt an invisible force constrict around his throat. By our laws, I could end your life where you kneel. His heart hammered in his chest as she approached, her movements fluid and predatory. But death would be wasteful, she said, releasing her invisible hold. The wellspring has already begun its work within you. You are now bound to it, and to me, Magistrix Thelana Valeri. Her black eyes narrowed. From this moment you are Shalrith, water thief and servant to my house. Rise, human. Your new life begins now. The binding ceremony took place at dusk. Elias stood in the central chamber of Magistrix Thelana's dwelling, surrounded by a dozen purple-skinned Nexorians, who watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. Strip, Thelana commanded, her voice carrying the same authoritative resonance that seemed characteristic of her species. Elias hesitated, acutely aware of the alien eyes upon him. Your human modesty is irrelevant here, she said. The binding requires skin contact. Reluctantly, he removed his tattered flight suit, standing naked and vulnerable before the assembly. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Thelana approached wearing ceremonial attire, a flowing garment that seemed composed of liquid metal, clinging to her tall frame before pooling at her feet. In her hands, she carried a bowl of the same substance he had drunk from the fountain. Kneel, Shalrith. He obeyed, his knees pressing against the cool, living floor that seemed to pulse beneath him. You have taken what was not offered, she intoned, her voice now carrying the formal cadence of ritual. The sacred waters of House Valeri now flow within you. You are neither guest nor ally, but bound to serve until the waters deem your debt repaid. She dipped her fingers into the bowl and began tracing symbols on his chest, his back, his forehead. The liquid burned like ice where it touched his skin. With this mark I claim you. Your strength is my strength. Your will bends to my command. The symbols sank into his flesh, disappearing beneath the surface but leaving a faint luminescence that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Rise, Shalrith of House Valeri. As Elias stood, he felt different, connected to something larger than himself. He could sense Thelana's presence in his mind, not controlling but aware, He is ugly, remarked one of the observers, a male with elaborate cranial ridges. Even for a human. He is mine to judge, Corvath, Thalana replied coolly. Not yours. The High Council will not approve of bringing alien servants into your household, another commented. Especially not after your father's controversial policies. The High Council does not dictate the internal affairs of noble houses, Thalana said sharply. Now leave us. The binding is complete. The observers filed out, many casting suspicious glances at Elias. When they were alone, Thalana's posture relaxed slightly. She gestured and a simple garment appeared on a nearby surface, a tunic and pants of some soft material. Those will adapt to your form. Put them on. As Elias dressed, Thalana studied him with those unfathomable black eyes. You will sleep in the servant quarters. Tomorrow you begin your duties. She paused. You have questions. Ask them. How long? He managed. Until the waters are satisfied. It could be days. It could be the remainder of your brief human lifespan. Her expression was unreadable. Your fate is not in my hands, Shalrith. It is in yours. Serve well. And perhaps the waters will release you sooner rather than later. And if Earth sends people looking for me? Thalana's lips curved into what might have been a smile. They will find you serving House Valeri with honor, or they will not find you at all. 30 days into his servitude, Elias had fallen into a rhythm. His days began before the twin suns rose, preparing the wellspring for Thalana's morning ritual. He learned to arrange the living crystals that filtered the sacred water, to speak the words of awakening that stirred the basin's consciousness. The household staff, 5 other servants of various alien species, initially treated him with disdain. Peltar, a reptilian majordomo with scales that shifted color with his moods, was particularly harsh. The magistrix waste the sacred water on you, he hissed one morning as Elias polished the ceremonial vessels. Human skin is too porous, too profane to hold its blessing. Yet Elias worked without complaint. The diplomatic corps had trained him well. Observe, adapt, survive. Each night, exhausted, he would record mental notes about Nexorian culture, storing information that could prove valuable if he ever returned to Earth. On the 31st day, everything changed. Elias was tending the bioluminescent garden when Thalana approached. She wore a simple house robe rather than her formal attire, her dark wavy hair unadorned. You work differently than the others, she observed, watching as he carefully pruned a pulsating flower. With consideration, Elias bowed his head respectfully. The plants respond better when handled gently. Magistrix, yet Peltar insists they must be disciplined to grow properly. With respect, Magistrix, Peltar is wrong, Elias demonstrated, stroking the stem of a violet bloom that immediately brightened at his touch. They're sentient in their way. They respond to kindness. Thalana's black eyes studied him intently, like most sentient things. That evening she summoned him to her private chambers, a vast space dominated by a pool of the same sacred water he had drunk from the fountain. Steam rose from its surface, carrying a scent like ozone and spice. You will attend me, she announced, disrobing without ceremony and stepping into the pool. Elias stood frozen, uncertain of protocol or expectation. The water will not harm you now, she said, observing his hesitation. You are marked. Come. He removed his servant's attire and cautiously entered the pool. The water embraced him, warm and tingling against his skin. Wash my hair, she commanded, handing him a vial of iridescent liquid. As his fingers worked through her dark waves, he felt her gradually relax. The imperious magistrix seemed almost vulnerable. Your people, she said after a long silence. They value freedom above all else, do they not? Many of us do, Elias answered carefully. Yet you have not attempted escape. You have not fought your binding. Would fighting have changed anything? Thalana turned to face him, water beading on her purple skin. No, but most would try nonetheless. I'm observing, learning, adapting. His hands had stopped moving through her hair, now resting lightly on her shoulders. Is that all? Her black eyes seemed to see through pretense. No, he admitted. There's something about this place, about you, that I'm drawn to understand. Her hand rose to touch his face, fingers tracing the now invisible binding marks. The waters chose well, she murmured, perhaps too well. This human has corrupted the magistrates. Korvath's accusation rang through the great hall of the High Council. He uses alien manipulation to gain favor. 3 months into his servitude, Elias stood before the assembled nobles of Nexoria. Thalana stood beside him, her posture rigid with formal dignity. House Valeri's internal matters are not council concern, she replied coldly. When you elevate a water thief to personal attendant, it becomes our concern, countered an elderly Nexorian with elaborate facial markings. Your father's leniency toward off-worlders nearly cost us our sovereignty. Now you follow the same path. Elias remained silent as instructed. Over the past weeks, his position in the household had evolved. Thalana had begun including him in her private councils, valuing his perspective on diplomatic matters. Their evenings often ended in her chambers, conversations stretching late into the night, sometimes followed by tentative physical explorations that bridged their anatomical differences with surprising compatibility. I challenge the human, Korvath declared suddenly, by ancient right. If he serves House Valeri, he must prove worthy through Kalethra. A murmur swept through the assembly. Elias didn't recognize the term, but Thalana's sharp intake of breath told him enough. He is not trained in Kalethra, she objected. This is merely an attempt to— The challenge is valid, interrupted the council elder. The human may select a champion, or face Korvath himself. I'll face him, Elias said, drawing surprised looks. Silence, Thalana hissed. You don't understand. I accept the challenge, he repeated louder. On my own behalf. Korvath's mouth curved in a predatory smile. The Kalethra arena was a circular platform suspended above a pool of churning liquid that Elias suspected wasn't water. Nexorians filled the surrounding tiers, their collective energy palpable. The rules are simple, the elder explained. Force your opponent from the platform. No weapons, no fatal strikes. Before he could ask further questions, Korvath attacked. The Nexorian moved with startling speed, his long limbs whipping toward Elias in a blur. Only the enhanced reflexes, a side effect of the sacred water still flowing through his system, saved Elias from immediate defeat. He ducked and rolled, using techniques from Earth's combat training that seemed to confuse his opponent. Korvath expected formal Nexorian fighting patterns. Elias gave him unpredictable human adaptability. They circled each other, exchanging blows. Korvath was stronger, his purple skin tougher than human flesh. But Elias had spent months of physical labor in Nexoria's higher gravity, building strength beyond his Earth-normal condition. She will tire of you, Korvath taunted. Humans are novelties, nothing more. Elias didn't respond, focusing instead on the pattern of his opponent's movements. There, a slight favoring of his right side. He feinted left, then dropped and swept Korvath's legs. The Nexorian stumbled but didn't fall. Elias pressed forward, grappling at close range where Korvath's longer reach was neutralized. They struggled at the edge of the platform, teetering dangerously. With a desperate surge, Korvath tried to throw Elias over, but the human had anticipated this. Using his opponent's momentum to pivot, Korvath tumbled from the platform with a howl of rage, splashing into the bubbling pool below. Silence fell over the arena, then a slow murmur of astonishment. Thalana's expression when he met her gaze contained something he'd never seen before, respect tinged with what might have been pride. The waters have made their judgment, Thalana announced, her voice echoing in the sacred chamber beneath her dwelling. 6 months had passed since the Kalethra challenge. Elias's victory had changed everything. No longer a mere servant, he had become Thalana's official advisor on interstellar relations, his insights helping to navigate Nexoria's complicated position between competing galactic powers. And in private moments, their bond had deepened beyond what either had imagined possible. Physical intimacy had evolved into emotional connection, tentative at first, then growing with surprising intensity. Now they stood before the ancient wellspring, the original source of the sacred waters that flowed throughout House Valeri's holdings. Are you certain? Elias asked. This can't be undone. Thalana's black eyes held his gaze. Her purple skin seemed to pulse with internal light, her dark wavy hair adorned with the living ornaments of her house. The council will not accept our union otherwise, she said, and I will not lose you to your world or mine. The elder priestess approached, carrying a crystalline vessel filled with luminescent liquid. The transformation is painful, the priestess warned. Many do not survive. I survived drinking from the garden tap, Elias replied with a small smile. I'll survive this too. Thalana took his hand, her 6 fingers intertwining with his 5. You have no idea what you will become, she whispered, echoing her first words to him. But now with tenderness rather than threat. As long as I become yours, he answered. The ritual began at moonrise. Elias was submerged in the wellspring, the sacred waters enveloping him completely. Pain beyond anything he'd experienced seared through his body as the waters reshaped him on a cellular level. Through the agony, he felt Thalana's presence in his mind, stronger now, a tether to hold on to as his humanity was not erased but transformed, enhanced, evolved to something new. When he finally emerged, gasping and trembling, his skin held a faint purple undertone. His senses were heightened, his awareness extended. The binding marks that had once been invisible now formed an intricate pattern across his chest, a permanent symbol of his place in House Valeri. Welcome home, Elias Valeri, Thalana said, helping him from the pool. The council members who had opposed them now bowed their heads in reluctant acceptance. The water's decision was final. This human had not merely earned his freedom but had been judged worthy of becoming one of them. Later, as they stood in the garden where their story had begun, Elias ran his fingers over the simple tap that had changed his fate. Do you regret it? Thalana asked. Drinking from my fountain that day? Elias looked up at the alien sky, now as familiar to him as Earth's had once been. He thought of the message pod he'd sent home, explaining his choice to remain on Nexoria. Some would understand. Many wouldn't. I came to your world seeking knowledge, he said, turning to embrace her. I found something greater. And what was that? She asked, her fingers tracing the binding marks that now symbolized not servitude but belonging. A truth humans have always known but sometimes forget, Elias replied, that our greatest strength isn't technology or force or even adaptability. It's our capacity to transform, through hardship, through connection, through love, into something more than we were before. Thalana's lips met his in the garden where a desperate drink had once seemed like the end of everything, but had instead become just the beginning. You have no idea what you just became, she had told him once in warning. He hadn't. None of them had. But now they knew.